Hi everyone! Winter reading has started, so if you haven't signed up already, go ahead and visit our website to use the Beanstack app or stop in the library to sign up. It's for all ages, so grown-ups can grab a cozy book too and get reading. Speaking of cozy books, let's get started with story time. We're going to have some mitten themed stories today. Our first story is If You Want to Knit Some Mittens. And this one was written by Laura Purdy Salas and illustrated by Angela Matson. What do you do if you want to knit some mittens? Let's find out. Number 1, get a sheep. Seriously. Number 2, keep her warm and well fed through the long, chilly winter. Wish for mittens, wait for spring. Number 3, in the spring, your sheep might beg for a mohawk or for a pig. No, sheep tails. But scraggly sheep need a neat, complete buzz cut. Number 4, soak the dirty fleece in soapy water. Rinse out grass and food and dirt. Sheep are not the cleanest creatures. No offense meant, sheep. A barn is not the cleanest place. Number 5, gently press the fleece to squeeze out the water. Riding your bike over it does not work. Do you think the sheep is going to get the water out that way? I don't think so. Number 6, once it's dry, pick the fleece into pieces. Then use bristly paddles to card them. This untangles the fibers. It does not work on people hair. Number 7, spin your wispy wool into yarn. Let your spinning wheel hum and sing to your sheep to sleep. Number 8, choose a color. Choose a color for your mittens. Sunny gold? Great! But chances are your sheep did not grow gold wool. What color is that sheep? Is it gold? No. How are we going to get our sheep to be gold? Maybe we don't need the sheep to be gold. Let's see what happens. Number 9, quick, plant some marigolds. You need soil, sun, and water. Why are we growing marigolds? I don't know. Let's see. Number 10, wait. Number 11, still wait. Number 12, wait. Well, nobody said this was going to be a quick project. Number 13, pick marigolds and dry them in the sun. Jumping rope nearby is not recommended. Oh dear, what happened to all her marigolds? Did they go flying around? Number 14, make an icky mixture and soak your yarn in it. This step helps the dye stick better. It only looks like noodle soup. Remove the yarn and rinse it off. It's not noodles. Number 15, soak your marigolds in water. It's marigold magic, sheep. Number 16, cook your yarn in marigold dye. Did you know that yarn had to be cooked? Don't recommend eating it though, even though it might look like noodles. Number 17, then spread your yarn out to dry. You might think it would be a cool mummy costume. It would not. Number 18, get some knitting needles and learn to knit. Let your fingers fly. Click, clack, slip, snap. Knit your mittens and wait for winter. Whew. Now slip on your mittens and hold the golden sun in your hands. Have a warm and woolly winter with your friend Sheep. Looks like she knitted not just the mittens, but it looks like a hat for her sheep too. Who knew that making mittens took all year long like that? Were you surprised? So that's what you do if you want to knit some mittens. Our next story is also about a mitten, but this time not just mittens, there's also a sock. It's called Mitten, a LintFree love story, and it was written by David Gordon. One cold afternoon, a mitten sat atop a fence post. "Sir," Mitten called out. A man bustled by with a basket overflowing with laundry. "Something is falling out of the order," and there on the ground lay a single sock. I don't think the man heard the mitten. Sock barely stood up before a bunch of school kids trampled on him. "Are you okay?" Mitten yelled down. "Oh, I'm used to being walked on," Sock said with a cheerful voice. "Hey, what are you doing up there by yourself?" "I used to be a part of a pair," Mitten said sadly. Now I'm alone and lost. Wow, said Sock. I guess I am too. It's true. Mittens and socks usually come in pairs, don't they? Wonder what happened to their pairs. Mitten jumped off the fence post. Without my right mitten, she said, I'm just a left. Sock was neither a left nor a right, but he knew what she meant. We've got to find our other halves, he said, as they set off through the park. Mitten covered her nose. What's wrong? Sock asked. I hate to break this to you, said Mitten, but you don't smell so good. Ever have smelly socks? Not so good. All of a sudden, Mitten was caught, flipped, and flung through the air. She landed in the trash. Hey, what are you doing in there? Sock called. Sock pushed and pushed until the garbage can fell over. Mitten tumbled out, brushed herself off, and grumbled. Then Sock wrinkled his nose. Now who doesn't smell so good? By now, Mitten was cold, dirty, and downright annoyed. They passed a grocery store, then a pet store, and Sock stopped in front of a laundromat. It was closed, but he had an idea. Let's sneak in and get clean. Mitten shrugged and followed. It must have sounded like a pretty good idea by then, right? Wow, they both whispered in awe. The shiny machines towered above them like skyscrapers. Too bad we don't have any money, Mitten said. Don't worry, said Sock. He wriggled under a dryer. 4 quarters shot out, and Sock emerged smiling and covered with lint. Mitten couldn't help but giggle. See him all covered? They're both pretty dirty now, aren't they? Mitten, the water is perfect. Come on in, Sock called as he bobbed in the bubbles. Even Mitten had to admit that it looked pretty fun. She tested the water, then eased herself into the warm, soapy suds. The two played splashing each other until, ding, the wash cycle was done. We'd better get dry, Mitten said. She put a quarter in the dryer and they spun around and around. Yippee! Sock shouted. When Sock stumbled out, he was not only very dizzy, but he had shrunk, small enough to fit on a baby doll. You should have told me you were wool, Mitten muttered. They made their way out to the sidewalk. Sock was so tiny he fell behind. Oh dear, what's going to happen to him? Suddenly, 2 dogs jumped out from the corner and grabbed him. They tugged and pulled and stretched Sock to 10 times his size. Put me down, my friend. Put down, my friend, yelled Mitten, charging back to the rescue. The dogs were so surprised they dropped Sock and took off. I don't feel so good, Sock moaned. Poor Sock. What would you do without me? Mitten sighed and threw him over her shoulder. Mitten couldn't see where she was going and walked right over a metal grate. She and Sock fell through the holes. Down they tumbled, thumb over heel through the darkness. And landed on the subway tracks. Mitten started to cry. Now I'll never find my other half. Don't worry, Mitten. We'll be all right, Sock said. Oh, no, we won't, Mitten shouted, pointing to the giant lights bearing down on them. The train zoomed over them, and one of Mitten's threads got caught under the undercarriage. She unraveled into one very, very long piece of yarn. Oh no. Don't worry, Mitten, I'm right here, said Sock. He gently gathered her up into a ball and hopped up the subway stairs. Poor Mitten. After a lot of searching, Sock finally found a knitting store and snuck in. He grabbed a set of knitting needles and a good how-to book. I'll fix you right up, Mitten. This will never work, Mitten groaned. But Sock kept knitting through the night to put his friend back together. Is it going to work? I hope so. The sun was rising by the time Mitten saw her reflection in a hubcap. Sock wasn't the best knitter in the world, but despite all her new lumps and bumps, she still looked like a mitten. You did great, Sock, said Mitten. What are friends for? Sock smiled. They walked up to a department store window and looked inside. Every sock, mitten, and glove had a match. They all looked so happy, but that's when Mitten realized something. After everything we've been through, I think we make the perfect pair. The two friends hugged, and from then on, they were smitten. Do you think Sock and Mitten make the perfect pair? These two seem to. The end. I have one more story for you, but I'm not using a book for this one. Are you ready? I brought some friends with today. Wait and see. This is an old folk tale called The Mitten, and it's about a young boy whose loving grandmother made him new red mittens to keep him warm when he went out to play. So the little boy puts on his mittens and heads outside, And as he's running and jumping and playing in the woods, he gets warm and takes off his new red mittens and puts them in his pocket. Well, as he goes running and skipping and running and jumping some more, one of the mittens falls out of his pocket and he doesn't notice. And along he goes to play some more. Well, that mitten landed on the nice white cold snow. And up in the tree was a squirrel who looked down at that little red mitten and said, "Brr, it's cold out here," and went down and tucked inside that red mitten to keep warm. Along flew an owl. The owl was flying through the air and her wings were getting cold, and she saw the red mitten on the ground and swooped down and said, "Is there room in there for me? Brr, it's cold out here." Squirrel scooted over and let the owl come in. Well, then along scurried a raccoon. "Brr, it's cold out here. Is there room in there for me?" Well, it was getting a little bit crowded, but the owl and the squirrel scooted over and made some room for the raccoon. Along came a fox. "Brr, it's cold out here. Is there room in there for me?" Well, the other animals weren't going to say no to a fox, so they scooted over and the fox climbed in the mitten to keep warm. It's starting to get a little crowded in that mitten, isn't it? Along came a little hedgehog. "Brr, it's cold out here. Is there room in there for me?" Well, there wasn't a whole lot of room left, but the hedgehog could curl up in a nice little ball. And in he rolled into the mitten to keep warm with the other animals. Along came a little mouse. "Brr, it's cold out here. Is there room in there for me?" Well, that little bitty mouse scooted into the thumb hole. There was just the right amount of room for a tiny little mouse. Well, along came a great big bear. Who's this? That's right, Buster Bear. I bet you didn't know that Buster Bear was in an old folk tale. Well, there was a bear in the tale. I don't know that it was Buster, but maybe he was related. Well, he came along and said, "Brr, it's cold out here. Is there room in there for me?" Well, the other animals were not going to say no to a bear, so they all squeezed in there and the big bear scooted in. Well, about this time, when all the animals were all snuggled cold and cozy into that mitten, the little boy realized that he was getting cold and went to put his mittens back on. But when he went to put his mittens back on, he only found one. "Oh no, Grandma's going to be upset if I only come home with one mitten." So he went running back through the woods to find his mitten. Well, as he's running through the woods, running, the animals hear him coming and they jump out of the mitten and go running through the woods to find another cozy place to stay. The little boy comes along and looks down on the ground. But oh no! What's happened to his mitten? Is this the same mitten he started out with? It's all stretched out. Oh no, this will never fit on his hand now. Oh, back to Grandma's he goes. Very sad. All the way back. He gets to Grandma's house. But Grandma takes one look at that mitten, and she knows what happened. Oh dear, it's okay. Don't worry. I'll knit you another mitten. And Grandma made another pair of mittens to keep him warm while he was out and playing. But this time he was a little bit more careful so that he didn't lose them in the woods. The end. I hope you have enjoyed the mitten stories today. Remember to sign up for winter reading and snuggle up with a good book. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.